being here. How many people in here, just so I know, work in conventions and exhibitions? Yes? Okay. Okay. Great. Other than the fact that you're in an exhibition right now, right? Okay. So my job, my name is Jared Bacher, first of all, and I'm the strategic consultant for the Saudi Exhibition and Convention Bureau. And my job today is to give you an overview on this newly formed organization. The Bureau was launched in September of 2013. So we're here today to give you a bit of an overview on what this organization is all about, a little bit about what the industry is all about, where we are currently, and where we want to go. So we've divided the presentation into those three areas. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? And then our roadmap on how we're going to get there. It's well known, especially for those who actually work in the industry, how important this industry is to the economy, both in revenue generation, economic impact, but also in job creation. This industry is essential to the role in the economic, cultural, social, environmental, and political developments of the country. And this is true not only in Saudi Arabia, this is also true in every country and every destination around the world. Most countries, most major cities are investing heavily in infrastructure and services for the convention and exhibition industry, and there's a reason for that. There's a direct impact of events which help strengthen the country's economy, creates employment opportunities for you, the citizens, creates a development of research and statistics, increases educational opportunities. So just like right now, when we're in an exhibition, we're exchanging ideas, we're exchanging information. If you're in a technology exhibition, if you're in a transportation exhibition, you're there and you're exchanging ideas. You're increasing your educational opportunities, especially for your local workforce. You promote cultural exchange. You promote the transfer of technological ideas. Promotes industry-specific best practices. All important. So we took a lot of information, research and statistics into consideration when we actually formed the Exhibition and Convention Bureau. We looked at the international sector, what's going on around the world, what's going on in other major destinations, what are they doing, what are some of the best practices being implemented that we can bring back here to Saudi Arabia. Same with on a regional basis, we looked at other destinations who are already established. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Doha, Muscat is coming up. There's a lot of things that have been going on in those markets that we looked at to see what could be applied to this newly formed organization. And of course, we looked here locally. There's been a lot of analysis that has been done on the exhibition and convention industry here in the country that leads into the formation of this organization. Whenever you have a newly formed organization like this, something that is responsible for driving economic development, job creation, these types of organizations never are successful without the collaboration of your stakeholders. So we spent 2 months last year, May and June of 2013, traveling the country, interviewing stakeholders, trying to find out what their biggest challenges were and what the barriers were for them in the marketplace. There was also a lot of research that was carried out by SCTA starting in 2007 and a little bit before that in different reports and studies to figure out, again, what the barriers were in the marketplace. And these were some of the barriers that came up. Lack of clear regulations. If you're an event organizer, it's very difficult in a lot of parts of the country to actually know how you go about planning an event. Where do you need to go to get your license? Who do you need to go to get a license from? How many different licenses do you need to get? It's all actually quite confusing and not clear. Inefficient and difficult visa processing is certainly a big challenge. Getting people into the country for exhibitions conventions, whether it's international speakers, exhibitors, or whatever the case is very difficult. Lack of qualified organizers, limitation on women participation, lack of qualified venues, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things play a role in prohibiting the development of this sector. So the Bureau is taking all of these things into consideration. So in May of 2013, the Saudi Council of Ministers passed a resolution forming this new Bureau. And in that resolution, they said that it's the Bureau's objective to do two things. First of all, and this is very broad, is to develop and organize the Saudi exhibition and convention sector. The second thing is to design and implement the necessary strategies to achieve objective number one. So what are those objectives? The first objective is to develop and implement efficient and transparent licensing process. To boil that down, it's our job to make it easy to do business in Saudi Arabia for the convention and exhibition industry. The only way that we're going to make it easier to do business here is by making sure there's transparent and easy processes when you're obtaining your licenses and so forth. So collaborating on the development of venues, which is absolutely key to developing this industry. As we travel around the country, and everybody in this room is well aware, that there's a lot of venue expansion going on within the country right now. Drive around Riyadh, and you see construction of new venues, new hotels, convention centers even, being built in the city right now. And the challenge is that these developers don't have all of the necessary statistics and information that they need to build these venues. So when they're designing these venues, they're doing it based on what they see in the marketplace, not necessarily of what the demand is. So we're concerned that these venues, at some point, we're going to get to a point in the country where the venues are either overbuilt or the wrong product is built to meet business demand. So we want to work with venue developers to make sure we're helping them build the right venues to get the most out of their investment. Developing and implementing service standards, that's in venues and as well with organizers. Providing research and statistics, including the measurement of economic impact. Right now, we're finalizing an agreement with an economist who specializes in the economic impact of events, in measuring the economic impact of events. So, after we have these processes put in place, at the end of a year's time, the Bureau will be able to run a report and find out what the economic impact is from all events in the country. We'll be able to run an economic impact report of all events held in Riyadh. We'll be able to run that same report for all events held in this venue. We'll be able to run that same report for all events for every organizer around the country. And you can imagine how important that is. There was a study done by the World Bank in 2012 that said the economic impact of this industry is about 9 billion Saudi riyals. We think that that number is very conservative. We think it's much bigger than that, and we're going to know that in about a year's time. We're here to provide career opportunities. We're also working to finalize an agreement with a professional development expert organization who has worked on building national programs of employment, professional development programs, where they work on training the workforce. They also develop career paths for Saudi citizens, especially the youth, so that as someone that's going into the industry, you have an idea of where your career could go. In addition to that, we'll work with universities here in Saudi Arabia to help them develop programs to educate the youth that are going through the universities and get them excited about this industry. And of course, to promote the kingdom as a viable host. One of the things that this country suffers from is the fact that most of the qualified events, the exceptional events that happen within the GCC, don't happen within this country. We need to figure out a way to get those events to A, stay in the country, B, come to the country, and make sure they're successful. So marketing is a big part of what we do. Now, I know this is really, really hard to read, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I wanted to just state that when we developed the Bureau, everything we do it with the analysis of how can we add value to the industry. Everything we do, we want to make sure it favorably impacts our organizers, our venues, and our events themselves. So this is key. Now, the way we've approached our development strategy is in a methodical direction where we've created 7 different pillars. The first of those pillars are what we call our products, our venues, our organizers, and then the events themselves. The next 4 pillars are what we refer to as our enablers. How is it that we can achieve what we need to achieve with our products? We can do that through licensing and classification processes, research and statistics, as I mentioned before, marketing, and then creating the revenue and resources that we need to sustain this organization. This organization is part of the resolution created by the Saudi Council of Ministers, was created as a self-funded, self-sufficient organization. That means we don't get funding from the government, so we have to figure out how to self-sustain. As I mentioned earlier, licensing, which is our first enabler, licensing and classification, and I'll talk about classification next. Licensing is absolutely key in everything that we do. Licensing has been taking place for events in this country since 1979. The process, especially if you've been involved in licensing events since then, has not changed much over those years. Up until last year, it was still a fax and a manual exchange of information. We've been fortunate enough over the last year to move that manual process to an email process, and eventually it'll be an online process. Right now we're working on creating an online portal where all licensing will be processed through that website. So at any point, event organizers will be able to go into the website, apply for their license, and that licensing process, because it's all electronic, will be streamlined much, much better than it is today. So who will get licenses? Organizers, exhibition and convention events, and the venues as well. Right now, the exhibition and convention events licensing process is taking place, and we're working on building the structure for the other 2 sections, the other 2 licenses. We've held 2 events with event organizers, 2 meetings with event organizers to help advise us on how to create these processes. Again, as I said earlier, we don't want to do this on our own. We can't do this on our own. We have to have the collaboration and the interaction with our event organizers to help us govern that system. Same with venues. We're getting ready to form an advisory group of venues, so convention centers and hotels, to help us design the licensing process for venues. Classification. This is the second part of our first pillar, our enabler pillar. We will create a classification system for organizers, for venues, and for events themselves. So as an organizer, if you're looking for a convention center in Saudi Arabia, and you want the best convention center you can possibly find, you'll be able to go to our online portal and find a list of grade A, class A, whatever we term it, venues that meet your specification. Same with venues, or same with hotels, same with exhibition centers, and so forth. So all of this is being created currently. Sorry, I started talking about venues. I'll go back to organizers as well. Organizers is the same thing. So if you're looking for a qualified organizer, whether it's an exhibition organizer or a conference organizer, the same practice applies. You can go online and look for a professional exhibition organizer, which has been classified by the Bureau. And as we create these classifications, we've looked all around the world at international best practices. We're not just making these up, these classification standards up as we go. We're looking at what exists in the marketplace now and what makes the most sense for the marketplace here in Saudi Arabia. So these will be coming out within the next year. Meeting sector is the same. We will have a classification standard for conventions, workshops, seminars, trade exhibitions, consumer exhibitions, all of these will be put in place. The challenge that we have as an organization is figuring out a fair classification system for events. There's a lot from a venue and an organizer standpoint that can be seen, whether it's certifications, whether it's training, the management structure, the fire and safety regulations, and so forth. We can see those things. We can see these programs. But when it comes to rating an event, it's not as easy. A lot of times that is based on opinion and viewpoint. So we need to figure out a way with our community on how to fairly rank the success of different events. Research and statistics, it's very simple: collection, evaluation, and distribution of sector-related data and statistics. And here's some of the things that we'll be looking for within our research and statistics. The inventory of venues, type and volume of events, number of attendees at an event, the employment factors, the employment's measurement, I suppose, if you will, of the sector, the economic statistics, and benchmarking. Benchmarking against ourselves, benchmarking ourselves against the region, and then also internationally. Marketing, as I said before, this is certainly important. This is one of the key pillars for us as we continue to promote the industry, raise awareness among Saudi youth to get them interested in being employed in the industry, making sure that we're promoting the country to get events to stay here in the country, promoting events to get them to stay from outside the region into the country, and then specifically looking at promoting the country to international events that are in line with the country's other economic sectors. We've identified 22 economic categories, which are some of the main economic drivers for Saudi Arabia's economy. So as we develop our marketing plan, we will make sure that we're carrying out activities in line with the country's economic diversification plan. So we're going to go out and look for events that complement every sector that the country is trying to build. Revenue and resources, as I mentioned earlier, we're aiming to be a completely self-sufficient, self-funded organization. The only way that we can do that is through a diversified revenue strategy. That strategy includes collaborative marketing programs. So when we're out in the world, when we're out in the region and we're promoting Saudi Arabia, we're going to do that through collaborative marketing programs. We'll do that with our convention center partners, our event organizer partners, our venue partners. Through the licensing process, obviously there will be fees that are obtained through the licensing process. And I will say that as we go through and meet with our event organizer committee and eventually our venue committee, they're helping us design these licensing fee structures. Application fees relates to the licensing process. Penalties also relates to the licensing process. So whenever we have a venue or an organizer that's working outside of the regulation, obviously there's penalties for that. Membership subscriptions. Membership structures have been designed for the Bureau. We have several different levels of membership with different attributes, with different return on these investments from the membership base, the people who would become our membership partners. And when I talk about membership, it's certainly open to any of our stakeholders, and there's different categories for it, but we're really looking at building the stakeholder base within the sector. So this would primarily be airlines, audiovisual companies, stand builders, people who provide catering services, et cetera, but certainly hotels, convention centers, and event organizers are part of our membership structure as well. And then the services. We're working, as I mentioned earlier, to create visa processing services that make it easier to do business within the country. So what we're trying to do is figure out programs, and we work constantly. We have constant communication with the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to figure out how we can collaborate together to create systems for visa processing. And then certainly with the wealth of knowledge that we have from our team, statistics, research, and everybody involved in the program, there's a lot of consultancy that we'll do within the marketplace. So the sector is vast, we all know that. The effects of, and it certainly affects all economic sectors throughout the country. And it's only through strong collaboration that we can deliver strong results. And this presentation was certainly written, was aimed towards our venue partners. So what is it that our venue partners can do? Our hotel and venue partners certainly play a vital role in the development of this industry, of this sector for Saudi Arabia. They certainly help us provide information for research and statistics. They help collaborate with us on making sure we're building the right venues, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure the country is not overbuilt or built with the wrong types of venues. They help us with the promotion of cities in the country through their sales networks, and this is particularly true for organizations that are multinational, such as the Starwood Hotels, the Hyatt Hotels, and so forth. These organizations have vast sales networks all over the world and certainly can help us promote the country. Participation in cooperative marketing programs, we'll ask the venues to certainly do that. Monitoring of event licenses in line with our regulations. Participation in promotional visits for buyers and media when we have people coming into the country to help us promote it. Commitment to delivering high levels of service. Commitment to upgrading and enhancing their own products and services. Helping us working with us and our professional development team on building the capabilities of their own staff. And making sure, at minimum, that they develop business strategies that are inclusive of the meeting sector. All of these things are absolutely important. And the last thing that I can stress, I've mentioned a few times in this presentation, but is absolutely vital in our success, is that we need to continue to collaborate. We need to collaborate with all of our stakeholders. We'll open communication channels wherever we can. And we want to make sure we're working together for the success of this industry. Thank you very much. Any questions? Please. Do we have microphones or? And that's a great question. His question for everybody that didn't hear was basically, how do we get the stakeholders to work together? How do we get them to conduct their business, especially in the Eastern Province? Because the Eastern Province has a big problem, right? We lose a lot of events across the border to Bahrain. You know, we lose a lot of meetings. Aramco, your neighborhood big company, goes a lot to Bahrain and maybe even Doha to conduct their events because it's easier for them to do business there. And we're trying to make sure that we remove those barriers to encourage them to stay here. And as far as getting the stakeholders to work together, and let me know if I don't answer your question, but the only way to get stakeholders working together is to give them a platform to do so. So we have to open dialogue, communication, get them involved in the process, and that's our job. That's what the Bureau is responsible for. And working through, and right now we have a small team. I think we have 6 people, 7 people, maybe 8 people now. We continue to grow. The executive director, Engineer Tarek Al-Essa, is here, as everybody knows. So we continue to grow on a constant basis. Right now, we have an organizational chart that's been approved by our supervisory committee. And that organizational chart gives us a vast amount, or not really vast, but a good amount of people to go and making sure that we're engaging with stakeholders at all points, through professional development, through economic, social, cultural, and political studies, through surveys, through the licensing process. They're going to have about 6 or 7 different points of contact with the Bureau. And then beyond that, we're going to be in the field. We'll have inspectors in the field out. And when we say inspectors, we want to make sure that we don't put a negative context on inspectors, because these really are our ambassadors to the industry. These are the people who will be out in the industry talking to event organizers, talking to venues, making sure we understand what they're doing in the marketplace, understanding what kind of events they're putting on, making sure they're following the regulations. All of these things are important. But the bottom line is we have to engage with them. They have to be part of the process. They have to be part of the conversation, or we won't succeed. But it's a big job, and we have a big job ahead of us, for sure. Any other questions?
Is there any license for the events management companies to like make training for people who want to get a certificate, for example?
Like any certificate, any training?
in events management, I mean.
In events management?
Yes, in Saudi Arabia.
We will. We're working as one of our one of the biggest focuses for us is professional development for the workforce. And that's really done on several different areas. The first area, and we have a company that we're working with now to finalize a contract who has expert experience in developing national workforce development programs within the events industry. So what we'll do with them is we'll work with them on creating, first of all, an analysis of the workforce sector within the events industry to figure out what our strengths are. We'll have a needs assessment, so we'll know where our strengths and weaknesses are. Based on that assessment, we'll create workshops to start training the workforce. We'll figure out where it is that we're lacking talent, what needs need to be met, and we'll start putting those workshops in place. And those will happen throughout the country. We're also developing on-the-job training programs so that convention centers, hotels, event organizers will have resources, a roadmap, if you will, on how to train their staff, from induction training from new employees through training their staff that's been with them for a long time. So on-the-job training will be another part of that. The next thing is they're going to work with our universities to develop graduate and undergraduate degree programs, and even vocational training. You know, a lot of what we do in our industry doesn't necessarily require bachelor or master's degrees, but vocational training is absolutely important. So we'll work with vocational colleges as well to create programs to train the youth and get people excited about being in this industry. Part of that will also be career plan development. So if you have a young person who wants to go into this industry but has no idea, because if you're not in the industry, you don't really understand it. So we'll be able to give them a bit of a roadmap from a career path development standpoint. So we'll be able to help guide them through the process. But absolutely, there's other organizations that have certification programs. There's the CMP, the Certified Meeting Professional. There's the Certified Exhibition Manager. There's probably a dozen different certification programs, and we're reviewing all of them to see which ones would be a best fit for Saudi Arabia. And we're working with those organizations to bring them here to offer certification programs to the workforce. And these certification programs tie in to the classification standards I mentioned earlier. So if you are working in a company and you want to be classified as a professional congress organizer or a professional exhibition organizer, you have to have a CMP or a CEM or a CMM, or it's an alphabet soup of different things. So there's a lot of different certifications that are going to be available, for sure. I did a really good job of covering the information, or I put you to sleep. I'm not sure which. Okay, all right, you're still smiling. Okay, thank you guys so much. I am here. Engineer Tarek is here. Talal on our team is here. If any of us can answer questions for you at any time, please approach us. Thank you again.